All right, guys, so let's talk about my zero recoil deleted AK. Just kidding, that's not at all what this is. I feel like every hype train video right now that is trying to essentially sell the AK sells the AK as how you can get some zero recoil, ultra high speed, low drag gun. And I feel like that was not the intention of my build. And I'm actually pretty happy with the way that my modernized AK came out. Now, there's still some things that I might change on this. Like I may change the stock. I'm thinking about going over to either a Samson or going over to a Midwest Industries 100 series AK stock for this. But to be honest, I'm actually really not that disappointed with the way this is. And I actually really like the fixed butt stock. It's good. It works especially well for what I want out of this AK build. So before we get into it, we'll go over essentially in this video, we're gonna go over what I changed on this, what I learned in modernizing AKs and by modernizing this one, and overall what I would recommend in kind of changing or updating the AK platform. And lastly, is it worth it? So TLDR, is it worth it? I think, honestly, like I said, this video is gonna kind of break it down, but I think that it's pretty cool. I do really enjoy the AK platform, and I think it is generally worth modernizing them. So overall, I would say that it's probably not the best thing to do, and if you're looking for the best like value to dollar, definitely sticking with an AR platform is going to be the best value per dollar, because you can get all the features of this AK and way more for less in an AR platform, and you can get them pretty much out of box. You can essentially go and get something like an AR by M&P, like an M&P 15, and it'll come with an M-LOK rail. It'll come pretty much ready to go, whereas something like an AK, unless you go to like PSA and then you're already spending more than an M&P 15, you can get most of these features out of box. But the AK is definitely one of those older platforms that, similar to the FNFAL, you know, it has its quirks. It's not going to be the highest speed, the lowest drag. So in my opinion, you know, TLDR, it's like if you want to make an AK, a space AK, you know, you want to make it cool, you want to make it modern, you want to make it hip, is it worth it? I think it's definitely worth it, especially if you already have an AK, but value per dollar is definitely not there. Anyways, now let's actually break into it. So first off, when it comes down to the AK, what all did I do with this? So this started life as a C39 V2, one of the later generations. Everyone hates the Century Arms C39 V2s, and that is kind of righteous. The older ones were not the best. So there were some bolt issues with them, but this one has around 2,500 rounds through it and no issues with the internals on this. It works perfectly fine. So for me, the C39 V2, I think, is probably one of the best platforms to mod if you're going to go this route, because a lot of people think that the C39 V2s are garbage, and they are actually really good. And even if you do get one of the older generations, just replace the bolt and the bolt carrier group on this thing, and you may want to replace the spring, but just primarily the bolt is actually the only thing that needs to be replaced on this. Everything else is pretty good, and I think that these are really slept on because these are some of the most affordable milled receiver, like billet receiver milled AKs that you can get out there. So really, honestly, a ton of value for your money on a C39 V2. Anyways, that being said, this one came with MOE furniture, Magpul original equipment furniture. So of course we have the fixed stock, we have the AK MOE grip, and of course there was an AK MOE grip up here. Now I chose to get rid of that, and one of the first things I did with this was that I put a Samson rail on here, and the Samson rail is probably one of the better rails. You can go with the Midwest Industries ones too. There is going to be a decent amount of custom fitment to these things. This one took me a couple hours to put together because there was just a lot of like I said, customized fitment that I had to do, and I had to Dremel down some different pieces on the handguard and on the like sling swivel and stuff like that to make it work. So there was a little bit of custom fitment there. A gunsmith could do this too, but I feel like overall, this was a pretty fairly easy rail to do. Nice thing too is with Samson's rails, this is a free floated kind of cover over the gas tube. So if you're like me, you want to play around with a forward mounted kind of scout style optic mount, it should be pretty good. Obviously, if you run thousands and thousands of rounds, this area will get toasty. So you do want to be cautious about cooking off your optic in having a optic here, but that's why I have a more budget optic on here, because I just want to see as a kind of philosophy of use or a test to see if this will actually work or if it just kills optics. So I like the idea of actually having a forward mounted optic, and though it does look goofy from the side profile, when you're actually up on the rifle, it looks really good and you can still see a ton around you. So I honestly don't mind it. I actually tend to, on most of my ARs, put my optics fairly forward anyways. I personally, it's just a personal preference. There's really nothing about it. So yeah, I don't mind it at all. It tracks really well for me, and it just works, like I said, very well. So that's that. Of course, after throwing the handguard on there, like I said, threw the optic on here, and then I threw my light on here. This is just a Phoenix UC35, and then I threw a little grip stop here. So you can see, you know, I can get good traction here, hit the light pretty easily. Everything is pretty spot on for me, and so everything is in a convenient spot. Lastly, for me, for modifications, I threw a hobnob on here from Texas Weapon Systems, or TWS. So threw a hobnob on here just to make charging pretty good. Now with these hobnobs, I did actually lose my first one, as I made a YouTube short on that, but you just want to make sure that these things are cranked down as hard as you can realistically get them. Make sure that you throw a ton of Loctite on them, and they should be pretty good. So haven't any issues with this hobnob on here after I cranked down the freaking bits on here, so, or the little set screws, if you will. Other than that, this one does have an aftermarket trigger in it. I forget what the trigger is in this. I'm blanking on it, but it definitely has an aftermarket trigger that has a very nice reset and a super clean trigger. It is very nice. I wish I could remember what trigger was in here. It is from the factory, but it is an aftermarket trigger that is super clean on this AK in particular. In addition to that too, it also does have from the factory an extended mag release, which I really do like. So anyways, makes mag changes super easy. Now, with all that said, what would I change on an AK if I got just a stock like Zastava with wood furniture? What would I prioritize for modifications? For me, I think a lot of these like cool guy features, like having a 10.5-inch M-LOK rail, is very cool. I would definitely recommend it for people. But for me, from my experiences, some of the initial mods that I would do is, first off, I would probably change the trigger. AKs do not have the best triggers, but this trigger here, I believe it's made by Tapco, but I could be wrong on it, honestly. I'm not entirely sure. I'm trying to remember, but having an aftermarket trigger is a huge bonus in an AK. They are super slept on and very good. And it really increases the shootability of the AK platform, having a good aftermarket trigger. Other things I would do is try to add an extended magazine release. Once again, this one's from factory, but the extended magazine release, so I just throw my mag on the ground there. An extended mag release really does make mag changes super more pleasant. Unfortunately, a lot of AKs have a very small magazine release. So unfortunately, hopefully you guys can see there that extended mag release. It is just basically a big ping pong paddle there that makes it super easy to get mag changes done. So I really do like that extended mag release. It is something that is really worth it. And so for my end user functionality, I'd say probably a trigger, extended mag release, potentially an extended safety, because safeties are notoriously not very easy to use for AKs. So I would probably do something like an extended mag or safety as well if you can, because safeties that are a little bit longer give you that ability to really sweep them. And sometimes, like with this one, you can even sweep it with your trigger finger if you're trying to be super high speed and low drag. But other than that, as fun as things like the foregrip or forend on this are, I would say focus on the end functionality and try to work with the fire control group and essentially do mods back here before doing mods up here, because bringing the AK into the 21st century is valuable and important, but I would say that you want a gun that you want to shoot, that you want to use before throwing money on, you know, fore ends, on stocks, on even charging handle, like extended charging handle things. Like, these are all nice things to have, and I would recommend adding them, but you want to make sure that you have a gun that you're going to enjoy shooting and using before throwing all the modernized, you know, gizmos, gadgets, high speed, low drag, operator, cool guy stuff. Aside from that, I would say, you know, once you get your fire control group, potentially maybe an aftermarket bolt or BCG entirely on here, then I'd say look at something like a hobnob. These things are pretty darn cheap. They're really not bad, and they do, in my opinion, especially when you're doing like reach arounds and stuff like that to rack your gun, super convenient. Other things I'd potentially look at, because I imagine most people don't want a kind of scout style forward red dot. I would probably recommend going with an RS Regulate if you do have a side kind of rail for optics. That would be still my preferred way. There are now dust covers and hinge dust covers that work with your kind of front trunnion area to add rail space here, but even those do shift. They're not the most accurate. So if you're really trying to run, you know, red dots and stuff, an RS Regulate is probably going to be the best way to go still, even in this day and age, for optics on your AK. In my opinion, they don't look as cool as a dust cover that has a red or has a pick rail on it that you can put red dots on. But either I would recommend going with something like a forward mounted rail based optic, or I'd go back with an RS Regulate on this side on your rail there. So once again, the AK has that weird oddity kind of to it, but that's just the way it is. That's just the way the AK is. Any type of old platform, you're always going to have some kind of push and pull or give and take with it. So my opinion, that would probably be the way I would go with that if you don't want to run a forward scout style red dot or optic up here. Other things, like I said, I'd probably push towards some of the last things being things like rails or stocks, because a lot of that stuff is going to be tertiary. And once again, if you don't enjoy shooting the gun, I probably would recommend waiting on that stuff. Other stuff you could do too that's reasonably cheap that does really increase the shootability is compensators or muzzle brakes. This one has just its factory muzzle brake on it, but I will say most AKs do, some of them do have like the AK-74 style muzzle brake on them, but a lot of your 7.62x39s actually don't have muzzle brakes on them. They kind of have just flash hiders and whatnot. So I would say that a decent upgrade is some form of a muzzle brake. This one, like I said, already has a muzzle brake on it, so it's fairly aggressive as well. So for me, I really haven't been that motivated to change the muzzle brake on this one, but like I said, it already has one. So if you don't have one, I would say things you can do truly if you want to decrease your felt recoil with 7.62x39 is throw like a JMac Customs muzzle brake on there, and that should improve your shootability a lot. Other things, of course, you can throw an adjustable gas piston in here. In my opinion, I've kind of stayed away from these because a lot of people are like, oh, how to get an AK with 0 recoil. And in my opinion, like I come from shooting a lot of just larger calibered rifles, things like 308s, 30-06s. To me, 7.62x39 really doesn't have that much recoil. In my opinion, I feel like I'm able to control an AK very, very well. So for me, it's never really been about like building a 0 recoil AK. I feel like that's once again kind of trendy on the YouTube gun tube space, and it certainly does look cool. And it is pretty neat when you can just sit there and just boom, 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 no recoil. The gun just sits there. But in my opinion, it's just kind of unnecessary. Don't really need it. And the AK round as a whole is not like a super wildly uncontrollable round. Does it have more recoil than 5.56? Probably, I would say arguably, especially with the fact that this platform, the way the AK recoils, definitely has a higher not quite bore axis, because the bore axis is in line with the stock, but the actual reciprocation of the bolt is above. So, you know, the bore axis is in line with your shoulder when you level it. The bore is, you know, comes straight across, but your recoil and your bolt are slightly above your bore. So your recoil, when this comes back, will have ever so slightly just a little bit of upward rise. And so once again, throwing something like a muzzle brake on there can help control that. But overall, in my opinion, the 7.62x39, especially the 5.45x39, really don't have recoil, in my opinion. So I don't need them. I wouldn't really recommend them. I don't feel like shooting this is that hard, especially because this gun in total weighs just over 10 pounds. I believe it's about, with an empty magazine, just as you see it here, is about 10.5 pounds. So this is by no means a light platform. This is like, I would consider this a medium weight platform. Like my ARs are about 7 to 8 pounds. The AK is about 10 pounds, and my FAL is about 12.5 pounds. So if you're looking at, you know, like weights, I would say the FAL is a heavy rifle. This is like a medium weight rifle, and then my ARs are on the lighter side. So in my opinion, the AK is by no means like a heavy recoiling platform. It's moderate, and it works. So anyways, guys, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. Hopefully this has been helpful. Hopefully you've learned something from this. And as always, guys, God bless, and I'm out.